Hey, you'll let me know when we're good to go.
We are good, Ed.
All right. Good evening and welcome to the October 7th regular meeting of the Board of Estimate and Taxation. In order to get tonight's meeting going, Esther, may I ask you to please call a roll?
Yes. Can everybody hear me?
Yep.
Okay. Uh, Mayor Harry W. Rilling. Okay. Mr. Ed Abrams,
Here.
Mr. Ed Camacho, I can see you're trying to mute yourself. Ed, you didn't mute yourself. Didn't unmute. I can see he's present. Mr. Kendrick Constant.
Here.
Thank you. Mr. Troy Jelleret.
Here.
Mr. Artie Kasimis.
Here.
Kasimis.
Here.
Miss Ann Yang.
Here.
Okay.
Sorry, I just
Try
said
Ed Camacho one more time.
Yeah, I just unmuted myself. Could you hear me?
All good.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah,
and Harry's joining. I sent him the link as well.
Okay. But with that, we have a quorum.
Thank you very much. All right, looking at our agenda this evening, the first item on the agenda is approval of the minutes from our September 9th meeting. Can I get somebody to move those for discussion and approval?
So move, Mr. Troy.
Thank you, Troy. Are there any changes, additions, updates to the minutes from our September 9th meeting?
I only have one comment on page 4 of our package. There's a typo. Should be Mr. Ellis instead of M.E. Ellis.
Thank you very much, Ann, and for those keeping track, that is in the second line of the fourth paragraph on the minutes on page 4.
Mr. Chair, it's Jared. I have one change.
Yes, Jared?
There's a typo in there on the fourth page, where it's sentence starts, Mr. Schmidt said the South Norwalk Elementary School is on budget. However, the Norwalk High School may need an additional 19 million. That should say 10 million. That was a typo in the transcription.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any additional changes, updates, revisions to the minutes from the September 9th meeting? All in favor of approving the minutes as amended, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions?
Abstain.
Thank you, Artie. The minutes are approved as amended. Thank you very much.
Ed, can I jump in for one quick second? Esther, you can note that the mayor has joined.
Yes, I have.
Thank you, Tom. It's hard to keep track of all of the windows, so appreciate it. All right. There are no special appropriations on our agenda this evening and no transfers on our agenda this evening. However, there is a great deal of other business in section C, beginning on page 7 of our agenda, very specifically around both the contingent tracker and then in greater detail, the FY24, FY25 budget rollover requests that need to be reviewed and approved. So, Tom, do you want to walk through the contingency and then we'll get into the rollovers?
Yeah, so contingency, we had a couple of items last month, and one of them will be coming up with the rollover request, but 21,000 for Arc Bridge. That is the vendor that we are using for the redistricting consultants. And then recall that Joyce was here to talk about the Common Council chambers audio video upgrade, getting some money up front to get that initiative going. Recall that the state will be giving us a grant for $40,000. So the net cost of the city will be about 30 after that project is done. And some urgency on that one. It needs to be done by December 31st to qualify for the grant. So Joyce is going to make that happen.
Okay, great. And we have 2.457 million left in contingency at this point.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, and recall, normally it's 1.5 million. It's bumped up a bit this year to address the ongoing labor negotiations and whatever they settle on.
Okay. Any questions from anyone on the board about where we are in contingency?
Mr. Chairman, Stroy, real quick. Tom, where are we with the union negotiations? I know we have that set aside, but give a minor update of where we are.
Jared, did you happen to catch anything in the cabinet meeting this morning? Anything new?
I can speak to that.
Okay, well, the mayor
We
will
are
do it.
making some progress on the negotiations. We are having a meeting tomorrow to discuss exactly where we are. I'm not at liberty to discuss any financials or back and forth discussions relative to other personal items or personnel items. So, but I see Tina here. We are making some progress. We have union contracts with 2405, police and fire, and I believe NMEA. Is that correct, Tina?
Sorry, I thought I unmuted. Yes, and NASA in the grant.
And
So there's
NASA.
6 total. Yeah.
And the timing is going to be what, year end, or is there no time deadline on these?
It should be prior to year end. We're actually making some really good progress. So I'm hoping to be able to, but it will be before year end.
Good. Good luck. Thanks.
Thank you.
Any other questions on contingency? Okay, seeing none, may I get someone to please move the rollover requests for
I'll move it.
discussion? Thank you, Artie. All right, and Tom, I know there were some things due to some conflicts this evening that we needed to bounce around and not necessarily go in the order of page 9 of our agenda. I believe the Board of Education needed to go first and then operations due to other commitments that both have this evening. Is that correct?
That is correct. We do have Lunda on the line. And
Yeah,
he has
before we move on with this, I just wanted to make my comments relative to the rollover requests. This is something we do each year as we reconcile the budget and try to figure out exactly how much we have left over and what we're going to be asking to do with it. Budgeting, as we know, is not exact. It's kind of, you put together what you believe your revenue is going to be, and you then put together what your expenditures are going to be. This year, I believe did I lose it?
Nope, you're still here, Mr. Mayor.
You're still
Okay,
with us.
Somehow my screen got over, but anyway, let me finish up with that. This year we had a surplus at the end of the year, which was a nice surplus. And what we try to do is because the department heads to a person were really responsible and ran a good year and kept within their budget, and in most cases came in under their budget. And so what we try to do is look at what things they may not have gotten last year that we may try to give them this year, and it's kind of a reward for their responsibility and their judicious managing of their department. And so we try to give them a little bit back, not everything. We make with all the department heads when they make their requests and determine what is absolutely needed and what is perhaps, like I say, a want rather than a need. So looking at this, as you can see, we had an unaudited budget of about 9.2 million. And we're recommending 3.6 back in different areas, and I would recommend that we give this an approval because of like I say, the department heads all ran their departments with responsibility, and they came in under their budget.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Chairman, real quick question for Tom. Regarding this, did we take down the rainy day fund amount because we had a little extra here, or explain that one real quick, Tom?
So in fiscal 24, we had budgeted for $6 million drawdown.
Right.
Because of this strong performance on the budget, we didn't have to take that. So there was zero withdrawal from the rainy day fund. recall that for fiscal 25, we have 8 million budgeted as a rainy day drawdown. And the reason for the increase was to minimize the impact of residential property taxes as best we could. So depending on how the year goes, we may or may not have to take that 8 or some portion of it. So too soon to tell.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
A question also, how does in the budget request, so for the 3.6 million, does that increase the overall budgeted amount? So if we had approved, call it 400 million, and we add this rollover, is now the budget approved 403.6 million?
Yeah, that's correct. We have what's called the adopted budget and then the revised budget. So the difference is the amount of rollovers that we approve.
But it does not go over the cap that the Common Council approved.
Got it.
Hey, Tom?
Right.
Okay.
And
Well,
when,
we set a budget that was below what the council had approved as a
Right.
cap. And even with the rollovers, we remain below that cap.
The
number.
rollovers, the money that we're rolling over was already in the department budgets. That was part of the budget that was approved, so.
Yeah, that wouldn't add to anything. That wouldn't add to it would be a nullity because it's just a rollover. It doesn't count as new money for the following year.
I understand. I just wanted to understand what the budget amount would be. And so when we review the upcoming budget, is the number that we're going to see is a comparison to what was approved, or will it be based on this revised number of the additional, call it 3.6 million?
Yeah, when we do all of our analytics, it's against the original adopted budget. So we talk about, 3% increase or a 4% increase. We're talking about adopted to previous year's adopted versus this year's request.
Okay.
So,
And the difference between 9.2 and 3.6 goes just into the general funds.
correct.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other clarifying questions before we start the line item review? Tom, I believe you were going to turn it to Linda.
Yeah, Linda is on the line and has a relatively straightforward 2 requests, and that is on page 30 of 88 in your agenda. So it's the very last rollover item if you want to scroll to that. And Linda, you can take it away.
Sure. Good evening, members of the BT and the finance team. So with you, we have our request is in two parts. The first part, we have about 168,000. These are mainly bills that were expenses that were incurred in fiscal year 24 for a variety of reasons, supply chain, they weren't delivered on time. But we've already paid for we've already received the services or expect to receive the services, but just the timing makes these items fall into the following fiscal year. For accounting purposes, our auditors allow us to roll these funds over because they were encumbered in the prior year. And so we have a list of vendors that we provided backup for. So that accounts to 168,000 that goes towards vendors. And then the second part is, as you know, by state statute, boards of ed are allowed to carry over 2% of their approved budget. In our case, what we have left over after all is said and done is a little over $60,887. And so that is what would be carried over into the BOE non-lapsing fund, $60,887. So between the two, the combined total of the request is $229,344.67.
Thank you. Questions for Linda? Okay, thank you, Linda. Since we moved this as a singular item, I'm going to ask that we go through everything and we can approve it as a singular item as well, unless anyone has any issue or concern with that.
I'm sorry, I just need a clarification. Linda, you said the total amount of rollover, is it 229,400?
229,344. Oh, sorry, 229,400. Tom, you rounded it up. Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
trying to minimize the impact of all the journal entries.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay,
Linda, no reason to hang on. I can, I'll text you one way or the other and let you know, assuming it gets approved.
All right. I appreciate it. Have a good
All
night,
right.
everyone.
Thank you.
thank you.
All right, and then Vanessa is on the line with Public Works and Operations, and that would be page 26 of 88 in your agenda. Quite a few line items here.
Tom, if I may ask, I appreciate good evening, everyone. Can we start with Recs and Parks? Because again, we are in this conference and we have a commitment. So at least I can let Rob and Ken out of the call, and then I can continue with operations if that works for you guys.
Of course, I didn't realize that they were there with you, but of course it makes sense because it's a Park and Rec convention. So then that would be page 28 of 88 in your agenda package.
Yep,
Total request of 451.4, and we are recommending 451.4. So go ahead, Ken, Robert, or whoever.
Yeah, this is Robert. I'm here. I don't know if you have any questions, but most of a lot of our requests for rollover are because of increased costs of a lot of our supplies, and we anticipate trying to get through the rest of the year. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we got you.
Okay, got it. But the first line item we say is security systems, and that money is there because we do have to pay the police for their overtime. That we have agreements with the police to close our gates, and also we haven't paid them yet for their overtime at the beach. So every year they have several police that are dedicated to the beach, and so we budget money for that. So that's the security. If you look at most of our items, repair and maintenance, number 3, 4 line items, they're mostly for plumbing supplies, electric supplies, lumber and wood products, and we are anticipating using these for our operations, and we know that costs have climbed, and so we're asking for those monies for the rollover. So line items 3 through I think 11 are mostly 10 are supplies. Clothing and uniforms, we do have to have a clothing uniform for our new staff. And then we have it's been just a horrible in terms of the weather, rainy, and we anticipate this winter that our people are out there really without adequate clothing. So we wanted to get them some adequate jackets to be out there in the elements. Line item 13, again, is to cover some costs for our garage, just increased costs for just maintenance of our garage. And then Tito Court, line 14, is we are bringing Tito Court online, and we're going to need maintenance for Tito Court as well. Line item 15 is wages and salaries. That's our systems analyst is a person that we haven't been able to get a permanent position for that particular job. It's one of our more important jobs because this person actually has helped transition or convert the ActiveNet system, which is our scheduling and reservation system. And not only has she been critical in the conversion, but the training and the continuing maintenance of this system, which is a multi-faceted system that does reservations, scheduling, facility scheduling, membership. It does, and it has the back of the house, a financial house that this person also has to keep in order. And this money is to carry us through the rest of the fiscal year. And then we have a plan we have a play and learning fund that we do with summer camps. And since about 25% to 30% of her reservations include or cover summer camps, and we have a pretty good surplus. I want to tie this position to that fund as we do all our summer camp funds, summer camp positions, and positions related to that, so that we have the funding there in that particular fund that I'd like to tie this position permanently to. But for right now, it's not a permanent position, but we need to carry it through the end of the fiscal year. And so we need that money for that purpose. We also want to carry over our wages and salaries overtime. We had to have a lot of overtime this year because of the rain and just getting the fields. And right now we're because our fields were in such poor condition because of the rain, we're aligning our fields. So we're going to be using some overtime there too. Also on the weekends, we don't have a weekend shift. So we have to pay also our staff for weekend work. And with the high school sports in the football games, there's a lot of trash on the weekends left. So we're trying to address that with overtime money there as well. We also had some additional concerts this year, and a lot of rainouts where we had to reschedule the concerts. And and we had to pay some additional money for the sound equipment and the sound technician. So that $25,000 is there for that reason as well. Again, staff overtime for garbage pickup and ball field maintenance, as you can see. And then we brought on some additional programming this year, demand based on demand, and we've this money also is for that additional programming, so it's for wages for our part-time help for those programs. We also have an additional temporary staff for our beach and our crowded beach this year. Our gate staff, we had to increase that, and as we got to get through the fiscal year, again, this money is to help us get through the fiscal year. And line item, the last line item really is for upgrades to. So that's, I don't know if anybody has any questions, but that's you know, that's our request for a rollover. And really what has necessitated this is really a lot of different overtime, because of the rain and the just the condition of our fields and our sports fields and our parks. So we're just trying to take care of you know, the demands of the public, and we're trying to make our parks as suitable as possible. So it's all,
Mr. Chair, I have a question.
nothing fancy, just all work.
Yes, Marilyn.
Yeah, Mr. Stowers, how did you calculate increased costs? Because I see a lot of increased costs here, several of them, and there's no indication of the increased costs and how you calculated the amount.
Yeah, we were thinking 3 to 5% inflation, inflationary costs based upon which supplies we were looking at.
And when you look at the run rate of costs to date, are they in line with that 3 to 5%, or is that just a swag based on your experience?
Well, it's been pretty consistent with what we've done paid out so far for supplies and equipment through the year. So it's been pretty consistent. I don't know if it's going to remain that way through the fiscal year, but that's what we've experienced so far.
Thank you.
Question, Ed, if that's okay.
Yes, please.
So this is a rollover, a request to roll this over into next year's budget, presumably won't count against next year's budget, but are these items that expenses that were incurred, but the bills are not due until after this fiscal year ended? Is that why there's a rollover, or is this a rollover sort of more or less anticipating future costs for these things? I'm a little confused about it.
Yeah, the security, the police security is money that we have to pay the police. That's a bill that they bill us. They haven't billed us for all their costs. But a lot of it is just calculating the anticipated costs of our overtime. A lot of it is wrapped up in the wages and salaries. And a lot of that is anticipating our demand for work on the fields, for work in our parks, for work on the weekends. We don't have really a weekend shift because of the union rules. We have to pay overtime for weekend. So that's one of the things we're trying to get in the union this year, to have either a split shift or to be able to have a crew on the weekends, because that's costing us a lot of money. Also, we've taken on some other work that traditionally we have not taken, like the NRV trail. We've been, hasn't been budgeted, but they've come to us to cover that cost. So yeah. And also recently, we also have a cost for power washing the heritage wall, which is also included in that. So,
okay. So these numbers included in next year's budget, in the budget, in the new budget request.
In the new budget,
because the expenses will already presumably be taken care of by this rollover.
Yeah.
I just, forgive me for an ignorant question, and Jared, it's probably more for you. General accounting principles say you can accrue for expense that was incurred but not yet billed. Can we roll over budget for things that are not yet incurred? I mean, what Robert went through is a lot of things that eliminate the need for expense next year, but are not necessarily expenses that are incurred now to be billed later. Is that within our principles here?
Just to be sure we're all talking the same language here. These were, this is money that was appropriated in last year's budget and is being rolled over to this year's.
Yeah.
I heard some talk about next year's budget. This doesn't have anything to do with next year's budget. It's this year's budget.
But it's this year's budget, but the expense has not been incurred, and the fiscal year is presumably over. So how does it? So is there some state law or something that permits us to include this? Not include this as part of next year's budget, but still have it for next year's expenditures.
So these are what's being requested here are expenditures that are expected for the current fiscal year.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Excuse me.
We're aligning with the expenditure with when the activity is going to happen, with the exception of the PD overtime, which I believe was
we're anticipating that these are the costs that we need in this year's budget, the fiscal year 25, not 26.
Correct.
But they're already part of this year's budget, aren't they?
No.
No.
So let me just do a little statement under the whole public works, because that's why I know that we have the biggest rollover. So good evening, everyone. So usually when we come towards the end of the budget season, when we go through all the presentations and there are the cuts, we try to meet some of the requests to try, particularly last year, to try to really be under either a flat parks got very close to flat or within the percentage that is expected from each department. So sometimes we know that although we'll meet there, we may have some shortage at the end as the year goes by. So that's why what we have been doing, this is not the first time in the last few years, is that on areas where we are able to save some money, we try to roll over so that minimize that gap that originally didn't get funded. So that's pretty much why we are requesting the rollover. I know that Ms. Towers did a very good job on explaining line by line, but I think that really the concept that you guys are gonna see under the whole public works for the 3 divisions, parks, operations, and building is pretty much that we had some money that was still left from the other year, but we really would like to use that money to help us minimize the gap of what we really didn't ask or receive on the current fiscal year.
So the budget, so the monies that's left over are left over from the last fiscal year?
Yes,
Mhm.
yes. So as of June 30, that was the balance in our accounts. On July 1st, we received the money that was approved around April. So we know that we're gonna have all this money until end of June 30th, but we are hoping that if we can have the rollover, will make us continue provide the same level of service without any impact if we get the rollover. So that is the whole idea of it. And what we do, we look very careful on every single line where we had some leftovers. And I have to say, I'm very proud that we barely came to you guys for any transfer over the year that we mess up in one account and we had to feed another one. So I want you guys just to take a look at the whole public works as an umbrella on this one, because I know that we have the heaviest operating and capital budget, but that's the concept. So I think that with parks, although kind of it's more specific on the small numbers or where they need the transfer, but the idea is to help us really start healthy this year and make us go through without having to really come for any special appropriation.
So otherwise, that money would have fallen into the fund balance if
Right.
you aren't requesting the rollover. Is that the idea?
Yes.
Right.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
I just want to give you a little more insight to our process this year, because this was my first time going through this process. So we actually ran a 5-year history of every account. And so as the requests were coming in, we looked at every single one of them against a 5-year history to see if there were any trends, either that the accounts were under consistently or were over consistently. And some of our decision was based on that. But then, we layer onto that also if there's any, special circumstances or needs that are coming up, like what's going on at Vets Park, and some of the other staffing needs. And we looked at those separately. So it was it's a judgment call, but, we did look at the details of every account that came to us and made decisions about each one of them separately.
And again, you've got a marketing person here making accounting statements, so I am way out of my depth, right? But rollover is different from accrual, right? Accrual would say I can accrue expense that was occurred prior year and budget for it and roll that money over. Our overall city accounting policies allow for the rollover of funding. This is a question. Allow for the rollover of funding to be repurposed into new activities in the current fiscal year? Is that a true statement? Because that's what we're doing here. We're not saying we had money we expected to hit in the prior year that we're accruing the expense. We're saying we are taking found money and applying it to new expense areas. That is an okay accounting procedure for the city of Norwalk?
So
It has been in the past.
Yeah.
Mr.
Right,
Evans. That's
it
how
has-
we have to, I'm sorry, Jared, I
It
know
ha-
it's
it
more your
has,
area.
it has been, and it is okay. So what we're doing, just again, to be clear, these were appropriations that were made for the past year for some purpose. And in a lot of cases, the money did not get spent, with most of these. Wasn't spent, it wasn't, incurred. And so there was no action on these pieces, with the exception, I would say, of the PD overtime. I believe that one was actually incurred last year. But the rest of these, it was just, it's surplus, it's excess appropriation that's being rolled over. So there wasn't any, there wasn't any kind of encumbrance of that funding.
So it's not going to, it's as if it went into the fund balance and we're now using it from the fund balance. It doesn't factor into the overall tax liability for the city, because for the residents, because it's as if it went in and came back out again. It's not new
increased taxes
that we need to acquire through a tax levy.
Right. The effect, yeah, I would say the effect is the same. Yes. I don't want to say it's
Well,
exactly what you're saying, but I think the effect of it is the same.
Yeah, yes and no, right? We're crossing fiscal years. That's the only reason for my question. Because again, my experience in the private sector is when you close a fiscal year book, you can absolutely accrue for expense that was incurred but not yet billed as you close your books, but you cannot then take excess funding and just roll it into the next budget. That is a private sector statement. I just want to make sure one last time.
Government can do that.
Again, we're not unintentionally breaking accounting rules and laws that are going to get us in trouble for the misuse and misallocation of funding.
No, absolutely not, because it's the board's prerogative about how and when to appropriate money. And as long as there hasn't been, any action on that funding in the previous year, that money is there for the board to determine how it wants to spend that money. So it's absolutely appropriate.
Okay.
Jared, I just have a clarification. The question is, I think Ed was asking it, but the question is about the budgeting process. Obviously, in a perfect world, we don't want to be $6 million over a surplus like this, because we went out and taxed the people for that fiscal year, and now we're not using it. So the budgeting process, in a perfect world, we should see zero surplus. Is that correct, Jared?
In a perfect
I'm
world,
saying in a perfect
world, yes, it would be zero.
Okay, so the effect here is that we went out, if we knew this a year ago, we would have not taxed, we would have, been the difference between the 9 million and this 3 million that you're projecting now for rollover, it would have been about $6 million less being charged to set up our taxes on the residents, right?
Right.
And I think the other thing
with the
that people
crystal
are
ball,
saying, Jared, you're saying the right thing. You're saying that these were supposed to be for items that were planned in that fiscal year that didn't happen for the result of shortages or cancellations. And you have to do that same, you want to say, all right, we're going to do that same project or get that when that item came in the next fiscal year, we're going to use that money that was budgeted for that item. But I'm hearing from she was saying that she's using this rollover money to help assist this next fiscal year's shortages, and that should have been budgeted last year. So I don't think that's the correct terminology.
May I just push back a little bit on this line of thinking? Because in the perfect world, if we were if we had a zero surplus year in, year out, over time, we would have no budget surplus. Like we would have no fund balance. And we would have a credit rating of C, probably. We need a fund balance, and there are two ways of doing it. You budget for monies to fall into a fund balance intentionally, right? Or you operate a city in such a way as with permits and new development and economic development, so on and so forth, that you actually end up with surpluses year in, year out that then fall into and create and become part of a fund balance that is large enough so that the credit agencies are confident that you're running your city the way it needs to be run. And so, but if you go 0 to 0 to 0 every year, you will never have a fund balance, and that spells catastrophe.
Yeah. And look,
and
Ed,
sure-
I
sure.
agree. I agree. And I started it with the, like I said, ignorant question of, from general accounting practices, is what we are doing, rolling over funding for new activities, acceptable? Our chief financial officer has said yes. You've answered my question. Thank you, Jared. Right? I just hadn't seen that on the private sector side. Okay, so we don't need to get into a debate on, well, there should have been 6 million less than tax levy. I got it. Right? You answered the question that says it is appropriate from a CFO's perspective to be able to reallocate unused funding to help support activities that roll into the next year. Thank you for the clarification. I'm sorry I took us down that rabbit hole, but I thought it was important to make sure what we were doing isn't going to get us in trouble from an accounting perspective. Any additional questions on Rec and Park for Robert before we go through the rest of Public Works? Okay, where do we want to go next?
I would say operations, sorry, Neil. So on operations, I'm not sure if you guys have any questions. I know we have I don't think there is a need for me to go item by item unless if you guys would like me to do. I just want to point for the three bigger rollovers that has been the ones that usually we ended up requesting every year. Under operations, it is the salt. As you guys know, the salt is always the $1 million question during our budget season, because we try to look at what happened in the past few years, how much was the usage, but we do not know how the winter will be. So it's usually when we try to cut a lot of our budget, our final one, and that's why we have, from last year, pretty much there was no major storms. We had some leftover, and that's why when was back to April, we will know that we could be able to roll this money into this account. So that is the big one there. The other one that it is a little bit bigger on our side, it is one related to waste. What happened is that, again, besides the contractual fee, we also pay per ton of all the recycling and solid waste that is hauled out from the city, and that is an estimate. On this year, we had a surplus in one account, but we didn't have as much on the other account. That's why we need a rollover to make it kind of equal there. And the centralized fleet, this is the account that we use to really maintain all our trucks, equipments, and cars. We only became more aware of that account a little bit later in the game, so we didn't have the opportunity to use as we needed. So that's why we're asking to do that transfer. So those are pretty much the big ones. I hope you guys would grant us that, and I'm open to any questions if you have.
Questions for Vanessa? All right. Tom, where do we want to go next then?
Let's finish up the third branch of operations and public works while we have Vanessa here, and that would be building management. So we have Neil Rennie on the line as well to talk to this one.
Good evening, everyone. My first item is for 3 Beldam Avenue, which we acquired earlier in the year. We have some budget shortages over there, mainly on the utility side and on the contractual services side, for $29,400. I don't know if there's any questions on that. We got this after the budget process, pretty much, right before the budget closed out, and we didn't have all the information that we needed to build a proper budget over there. If there's no questions on that, my next line item is for security. We've had extra security over the months, primarily due to voting and training for the for the elections, and therefore on the weekends we have to add added security on Saturdays and Sundays that we didn't account for. We paid that out, and we're trying to do an emergency action fund out of that budget, and we're looking for an additional $7,346. Any questions?
Thank you, Neil.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you, everybody. I appreciate your time. If
you,
you guys
Vanessa.
have any further questions for us, you can send to Tom, and I'm happy to answer. Have a
Yeah,
good
and
evening,
I'll,
everybody.
After the meeting, I'll send you a text with the result.
I appreciate it.
Okay.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
And thank you as well.
Okay, now to the front of the package. Page 11 of 88, we're going to move to. The first two items are the city clerk and legislative, and I'll talk to those when you're ready.
Go right ahead.
Okay, first one is for the city clerk. This is new software. It's called Civic Clerk software. This will streamline all the agendas and minutes on the city website. I don't know if you've ever gone on there, but if there are 50 different boards and commissions, there are 50 different formats. So we're trying to clean that up into a much more streamlined process. And the reason that we're transferring that into IT software from wages is because we had to pay this invoice earlier in August. So this is a backfill to cover the amount of the software. And then on the legislative side, another consultant, this is ArcBridge. That is the firm that we are using for the redistricting consultation. So they're going to continue to probably have some charges as we go forward. Right now, we'll roll over some funds to help mitigate the requests to contingency as the year goes on.
Yeah. Questions for Tom? Okay.
All right, next up is corporate counsel. We have Mario Capola on the line to talk about the other professional services, which is their outside counsel that they use. So take it away, Mario.
Evening, everyone.
Hey,
I
Mario.
think there's a little pause there. Were you able to hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, we got you.
Okay, great. So when we were planning our budgeting last spring, we had requested more than we were really budgeted for in this year for other professional services. And at the time, we had a big request because every 5 years we have a revaluation of the city's grand list. And we obviously had a recent revaluation, as you know, and we have about 100 property tax assessment appeals in the first year of the revaluation that we have to contend with. And we anticipate getting additional appeals in the next few years. Typically in year two, you'll get not as many as the first year, but you'll certainly get a decent amount of new appeals as well. Aside from the property tax assessment appeals, there's just other litigation that we've been busy with in the law department that we thought necessitated an increase in the professional services budget. However, we were under budget last year, and we're proud of that. And so we were told in the spring, by the way, probably don't need as much of an increase. You don't need this maybe increase next year because you're going to have money left over in your budget this year, and maybe just pursue that as a rollover to provide you with what you need next year. So because we've had a staff short, we've been short on staff. Quite frankly, we've had 2 positions open in our department. We've had trouble filling for attorneys. We had extra money, and we had intended to roll it over this year to be able to use for the property tax assessment appeals and other litigation that we have going on. And by the way, so I think that's why the administration has recommended the full rollover for our department, because they certainly knew that it was coming and that it's necessary for all the litigation we have, particularly the new 100 property tax assessment appeal cases that are pending in the Connecticut tax court. Is there any questions at this time?
Ann?
Of the cases, And if you recall, Mario, I was the one who asked you if you had enough money in the budgeting, when we went through the budgeting
I think
process.
you and I think Troy did it as well. I think as well had asked about that, if not others. But yes, I remember you asking a few times.
So the 100 cases, what's the total aggregate amount and the bid-ask spread between, so if you were to add up the assessments for the 100 cases and of what the city has said, and then what they're disputing, what's the spread?
I don't know offhand. I do have a spreadsheet with that information. I could tell you that well, first of all, you don't really know until they come in with their appraisals. And under the new rules in the tax appeal cases, the plaintiff has to provide an appraisal within 4 months, although sometimes they'll get an extension of that deadline so that you actually do know what their real number is. Because when they put the number on the Board of Assessment Appeals application, it's just a guess, and everybody guesses low. That's strategically what you do. So we're still updating our spreadsheet with what the actual values the plaintiffs are claiming in these cases as we're getting their appraisals in the cases. I would say it's a substantial number. It's tens of millions of dollars, probably over $100 million in dispute and value, probably maybe hundreds of millions of dollars. The mall appeal was withdrawn. That was our biggest one. So prior to that, I would have told you definitely hundreds of millions of dollars, maybe a little bit less now, but it's substantial. And I can provide an update to you, but it is substantial.
We're putting together a tool. I'm working with the assessor and with Joyce, and we're going to put together a tracking tool so that we can get updates on this as these cases get settled, and to be able to see the trends and the patterns and how many, what the dollar amounts are. So that's something we'll be able to provide you hopefully within the next 2 to 3 months, and start doing that on a regular basis. It's something that the Finance and Claims Committee was looking for as well, and so we're working on that.
I can tell you that anecdotally, we have a lot less appeals than we did in the last revaluation cycle. Last time in year one, we had, I did this analysis internally not too long ago. We had over 200 appeals, and in year one, this time we had about 100. So anecdotally, I anticipate less appeals in this cycle than the last one. There's reasons why, but I anticipate less than last time.
And just anecdotally, is the mix different? So are there more commercial appeals this time than?
Similar mix, a lot of frequent flyers. The law changed in Connecticut, and so we continue to try to improve the law on tax appeals. I'm actually appointed by the Judiciary Committee as a committee. There's a committee of 6 of us that are continuing to provide recommendations to the judiciary. We're working on form discovery requests right now. It's been taking a while, but the system hopefully over time gets better. Last revaluation cycle, there wasn't a requirement that plaintiffs had to provide their appraisals within 120 days. That was a new requirement in the past few years. So that has helped move cases a little faster, and also has led to more withdrawals in the first 6 months when they have to get their appraisal and realize they're not going to come in at a number that's beneficial to them in the case. So the system's changing a little bit, and that may be another reason why there's some less tax appeals, which was part of the reason behind the amendment to the statute, Connecticut General Statute 12-117A, to make that requirement for plaintiffs to provide an appraisal within the first 120 days.
So what was the resolution on the mall assessment?
A victory. They withdrew. There's no appeal. So that's a winner. We'll put that in the win column.
They're going to accept what the value we had.
They are accepting our value. We had significant litigation with them last time. Fought on motion practice. Fortunately, we won on the motion practice. We were able to get certain discovery. I think it led to the resolution of the case last time. This time they were served with our we started the process, but when it was time for their appraisal, they withdrew.
Wow.
Thank you, Mario. Any other questions on the rollover for Mario? I'm just
Yeah, just 2 points. Mario, was that in-house with the mall or was that outside council? Just curious.
In-house. Me.
In-house. Oh, congratulations. The other thing is, and Mario, I know we brought it up in the whole past, but I have to say I was very happy to see the Wall Street place is moving. I see action going on there. It seems good. I mean, I know they're working on the garage across the street, and I see a lot of action going on when I drive by. So thank you for that.
Thank you. There's the groundbreaking, I think, scheduled in the next 10 days at that property. So we're very pleased with everything we're able to help facilitate there.
Great job.
Right, thank you. I
One
need
more.
us to move along, Tom.
I have another question for Mario. Mario, on the outside, how expensive can these cases be to litigate?
The property tax assessment appeal cases. There's a wide range depending on whether you're going to resolve the case short of a trial or not. I would say 90+% of the cases get resolved without a trial. I would say at least 75% get resolved without having to really prepare for trial. So there's a big difference for the cases that settle without a trial versus with a trial. We've got a really good system in place in the law department, something I'm proud of. When I came in, the mayor said he wasn't happy with the way the city was handling property tax assessment appeals. There was a lot of complaints. We've done, I think, a really good job of streamlining the process. It's a similar process to what I've implemented in my work with 5 other communities that I represent on tax appeals in Fairfield County. So we've got a really good system, and it's and I think from a cost standpoint, our defense is a lot less than time-wise than other communities because we have a great system and a lot of experience, form documents, et cetera.
Thank you, Mario.
Shall we move to HR?
Yeah, Tina Fogel is
Thank you very much.
online. Yeah, you're welcome, Mario. And she has 3 line items to discuss. All yours, Tina.
Good evening, everyone. So we're making a rollover request for from IT and other professional services. The need for this rollover would be to, I'm not sure if you remember, in last year's budget, we increased the number of modules we had in our NeoGov. And so we were a little understaffed, so this will help us with training to make sure we are now fully staffed. So this will help us ensure that we have the appropriate training so that both for recruiting and hiring and onboarding is a lot more seamless. We'll be able to go almost virtually paperless. So that's part of what we'd like to do. Additionally, we'd like to roll over some of the funds for, as we discussed earlier, we're in the process of negotiating 6 collective bargaining agreements. We've had to utilize our actuary much more than we anticipated. And so we'd like to have that excess funds to handle any of those kind of things, as well as if we were to have to go to arbitration, although I will say that right now that does not appear to be something that we think we're going to have to do, but since we had a little extra money, we wanted to be safe. So if we don't spend it, then obviously next year I wouldn't request the rollover. But because we're negotiating all 6 contracts, we'd rather be safe than sorry. So that's why we're making the request for this rollover.
Questions for Tina? Thank you, Tina. Should we move to?
Thank you.
Should we move to community services, Tom?
Yes, so we have Lamond on the line here, and this first one is library. So I know that I saw Sherelle here.
Sherelle, hi,
earlier.
good evening. I'm in my car waiting for my kids to come out of their programming. Sherelle, want to do a quick high-level overview?
Of course. Let me find my place.
For the rest of you, this is page 14 of 88 on the agenda package.
Okay, good evening, everyone. I will be very, very quick since you have everything in front of you. Okay, so our first rollover, most of our rollovers are for grounds because that's been a major issue for us. So the first rollover, we're asking to roll over 7,400 into our grounds. We started this year at a deficit due to contractual obligations for parking at Eagles. So we had to roll over money into that account to pay for that obligation. And that left us with, let's see, roughly 2,400 for the year to budget. And normally we have roughly, I believe, roughly 7,400 in that account. The next account is machinery and equipment. That we're asking to roll over 12,600 into our grounds account, and I'll get to why we need the grounds account in a minute. So the next is 355. I know that seems like a very low amount for our contractual services. The major issue is pest control. So we were supposed to have mosquito treatment before the fiscal year ended. It rained, they couldn't do it, so they had to come the next year. That budget is extremely tight. So if we don't roll it over, we'll end up either transferring or we'll end up with a deficit at the end of the year. So our other operating supplies, similarly, we had an issue with our refrigerator dying, and we ordered the new refrigerator in the old fiscal year, but it didn't come in until the new fiscal year, and they billed us in the new fiscal year. That budget is also tight, so we're asking to roll over that exact amount for the new year.
The last two, go ahead.
I'm sorry?
No, go ahead. You were doing the last two.
Yep, the last two. Audio visual. So our branch was closed for roughly 9 months. So we really, we weren't expecting to be closed that long for our wonderful renovation. So if any of you are ever in the area, please go by and see it. It is absolutely gorgeous. So we didn't spend as much in audio visual, and we asked to roll that over also for grounds. And the final is books. So many of you know that we lost our accounts clerk tragically. So, we did the best we could, to pay bills. Finance was absolutely wonderful in helping, but, some things fell through the cracks. So when we did hire the new person, they basically had to clean up things before, we could order. So people had put in requests for books, and there were things that we should have ordered from the last fiscal year. And we didn't order it until August. So we're asking, to have that money transferred over to cover what should have been ordered out of the previous fiscal year. And for grounds, there's a lot of work that needs to be done. We have 3 parking lots, none of which are connected. So we have we have ours at 1 Belden. We have the 3 Belden Avenue lot, which we have some spaces in, and then we lease spaces from Eagles in order to, give the library more parking. And we need signage. We need to restripe our lots. So there's a lot of things that we need to do to just make the lots congruent and also to make them safe. And we met with the parking authority. They were absolutely wonderful. And so they're going to help us, with grounds, but it has to come, the money has to come from somewhere. We also have an issue between the 3 Belden and the 1 Belden parcel. And we'd like to be able to remove the fence, fix egress and grading issues so that people can maneuver between that parking lot instead of going all the way around. They can just go from the parking lot right onto the library grounds. And, we have other issues like we need to have tree maintenance, grounds maintenance, basically. So we were given by Guardian, a budget of 15,000 to take care of that. So most of this money is going toward our grounds coverage.
Thank you, Sherelle. Any questions for Sherelle? Okay. So we keep
All right.
moving, Tom?
Yeah, and then now we're gonna move on to the rest of the community services area, starting with early childhood, moving into fair rent, and then Lamont stuff in the Chiefs world, and
Sure.
finally health. Go ahead,
Great,
Lamont.
yeah. Thank you, thank you. I hope you all can see me. It's a little dark. My car doesn't have a lot of light, so please bear with me. So I'll just, to the point that you see it. So for early childhood, we do have a small workforce development program where we are encouraging individuals to learn about early childhood, given the hiring freeze and the fiscal year. We're asking to roll this over. This will pay minimum wage to Norwalk residents who are interested in early childhood. Mary Oster will place them. They go through the whole process and get credentialed. Regarding fair rent, we have, I think I came to this body a while ago. So we do have a part-time ADA specialist, and we have our fair rent officer. So there are trainings that they need to do, and sometimes the trainings are higher than what we anticipated. So we're asking to roll this over. And then the big lift, the big contractual is for fair rent is increase in complaints. We are definitely, as you all know, the state of Connecticut doesn't have rent regulations, so the fair rent office is that body that people can file a complaint. And so we are required to do hearings. On average, I did some data. One hearing can cost up to between $2,500 and $3,500, depending on the length. So we're asking to roll that over because we are certainly seeing an increase in our fair rent, and those are asking for a hearing. And we also have a legal consultant that supports that. So this money will carry that over. Regarding human services, this was just a delayed invoice for the smart board, which is invoiced at 2,200. And then also we're asking, and I thank the mayor for this, as for the community resource hub, we see residents all the time, and we see a lot of children. So we're asking to create a little toddlers area for the little kids. So when parents or adults are being seen by our family navigators to figure out, help them through resources. We're asking to create a little station, almost like when you go to the doctor's office, there's little things for the kids. So we're asking for that. And then the other contractual for Mid-Fairfield, we have a contractual obligation. They just delayed their invoice. I don't know why they didn't want to send their invoice. So that's based on what you have in front of you. That's at 112. And then we have an equity grant from Fairfield County, and that just gets rolled over every year until we decide to use it. I'll stop there if there's any questions, and I'll get to the kind of the big one, and then turn it over to Alf. Any questions at this point?
No, keep going, please.
Okay, great. And then the other one, and I'm always talking to you about this one, the summer youth. It's in our budget, but Jared could probably speak to how we're going to try to make this change so we're not rolling over the 95,000 every year. So this year we are going to roll over, but Jared has an idea of how I don't have to put this in every year. And then there were some contracts that were not ready by the close of the year. Our mini grant program, which is at 100, and then we had a 3-year contract with AmeriCares, who provide free healthcare to Norwalk residents, was at 10,000. And then I do want to note that you all may still see the 92,000 that's to be deleted. We did cut that out. As you can see, the original request was at 570, and then we were able to look at our budget and figure out another almost 100,000. So we're requesting just the 556 for this year's rollover.
Thank you. Any questions for Lamont on any of those items? Okay, shall we
Great.
move to,
Thank you very
health?
much.
Thank you, Lamont.
Deanna is here. Deanna, want to do a quick highlight?
Sure. Good evening, everyone. So for the health department, several of our requests are related to delayed invoicing or payments or ordering for various supplies. We do have a request for a carryover for the line item that supports benefits for our WIC employees. We had vacancies over the past year, so we didn't have to expend that whole line. But we are fully staffed now. We anticipate needing to use it in the new year, additional funding to support them. I do want to make a small note that when I put the request in, one of our journal entries hadn't been processed yet. So that amount we had requested 37,046.57. It should be actually 35,679.56. So it's slightly decreased. Just want to make note of that. We do have a request to carry over some part-time wages. One of them is in the environmental health division. We've been having someone that's been working temporarily since the hiring freeze. We haven't been able to hire a full-time sanitarian. So we've had someone temporarily coming in to help support some of our state mandated services. One of them is food inspections. So to be able to continue having that person on board until we are able to hire after that hiring freeze is lifted for us. And I think there's another line item related to staffing for preventable diseases due to cuts in one of our grants. We use a combination of city funds and grants to support some of our preventable disease staff. And so we're hoping to be able to continue our services by carrying over funding into this year to support some part-time staff.
Questions for Deanna? All right. Thank you, Deanna. Tom, I believe the Arts Commission is next.
Yes, now we're moving into economic and community development. We'll go in order of the agenda. So we are now on page 16 of 88 in your agenda package, and it's the 2 line items for Sabrina on the Arts Commission. Go ahead, Sabrina.
Thank you, everyone. So the 2 items are actually in total $5,100, which is the total for the request. It was actually materials that we used to prep the West Avenue mural wall. Although these expenses were charged to the prior fiscal year end, the statement that we received that it was paid was received after the fiscal year had ended, which is why you see this request to cover those expenses. The expenses on the invoices were previous to the July 1st date. It's just the payment that we processed through the statement itself was after the July 1st date.
Questions for Sabrina? Thank you, Sabrina.
Thank you.
Right. Up next is Jim Travers on with transportation, mobility, and parking. Jim?
Hello, Commissioner. How are you? We had 3 items that we were looking to present to you today. The first one for advertising. We're required to advertise for the grant-funded projects that we get. We have 2 projects that are out. We've been delayed in part with DOT review of the project, but we are about 30 to 45 days away at this point. So these have been long standing projects that were in there that we'll just do the final step to get that underway. So that one's a relatively small dollar amount at $19.50. The next one is other professional services. The larger portion of this, I believe you have the invoice was for FHI. This was requested by the Chief of Staff and the Ordinance Committee to have the consultant who is working on our complete streets legislation expand their look into some of the other ordinances that pertained to that. So there's one for that. And then the addition is going to be supplemented by by funding from the 25 year. And that is we are working with DOT on including signals on Route 1 Connecticut Avenue into our fiber ring so that we could work with an adaptive assignment of those signals with the Costco signals associated with the Costco opening and the Costco remodeling and Wegmans opening. And then lastly was the Bike Walk Commission at 1,500. I know it's a smaller one, but this is a small budget that the mayor approved for the Bike Walk Commission. We've had a leadership change in the Bike Walk Commission. Tonight we are meeting and appointing a new chair, and so this was to tie up some of the other loose ends for their budget items. So I'm happy to answer any questions you have.
Questions for Jim? Doesn't appear there are any, Jim. Thank you.
All right, thank you for your time.
All right, last in economic and community development is planning and zoning, and we have Steve Kleppen with us this evening to talk to those 4 line items. Steve?
Sure, thank you. Yep, good evening, everybody. 2 of the items are actually related to the same topic. We have some ongoing litigation related to the recent zoning rewrite that we're working through. We have outside counsel who's assisting us on the mediation and appeal, as well as we have to do some transcription work of all the hearings. And there were, several hours of hearings, and we need somebody that's outside city staff to put those transcripts together. So that would be the task that that person would be undertaking. Second item related to backfilling one of our vacant full-time positions. It's not a new position. It's just one that was vacant by promotion because we promoted somebody else from within up to another spot. So we have the vacant zoning assistant position that we're looking to fill. That person's responsibilities mainly due to such things as permitting, going through and, assisting the public when they come in, answering phone calls and emails, doing some inspections, but by and large, it's taking care of the permitting process. So that's kind of a crucial role for us, considering the volume and, the amount of work that comes through our office kind of on a daily basis. The last item is related to an Esri extension. Esri is a GIS software that the city's had for a long time. This particular extension is called Arc Urban, and it allows us to take our zoning and put it into the GIS, and it allows us to build out like theoretical developments, how we want to see things, how things could be, gives us different perspectives. And over time, I think it will allow us to be a little less reliant on consultants to do that. We had it in part of the IT budget request for the last 2 years, but IT's capital request got cut in different areas, so they weren't able to fully fund it. So we'd like to move some of our money forward to get that going so we can work on a few projects that we've been kind of put on the back burner for the last 2 years.
Thank you. Questions from the board for Steve? Thank you, Steve.
Thank you.
All right, and now moving on to our world in finance. First one will be Paul Gorman, the tax assessor. Paul, I think I saw your name on here somewhere. Did I? I do not see him on here. Jared, you got this one, or you want me to talk to it?
Yeah, sure. This is other professional services. This is related to an invoice from last year that was late due to the whole cycle, the whole reval cycle got delayed just because of the kind of some of the anomalies of phasing it in and everything. Pretty much that whole process got delayed, and so this was an invoice related to the reval process that was a casualty of that. And so so we're asking to roll that forward.
Questions on this one? All right. Tax collector, Tom.
That
I'm
was,
sorry, Ann. Did you have a question?
what's already budgeted for? It's just a timing issue?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
So next area is tax collector. Lisa is out of the office, but we have Al Palumbo on the line to talk to their items, four of them. Al?
Good evening, everyone. A lot of what happened to us is we postponed our tax sale from July to September. So a lot of the expenses associated with the sale got paid in the current year's budget as opposed to last year's budget. So, because they just came in later because we pushed everything back for 2 months. And that was about probably about, it looks like about $39,000 of the rollover. The rest of it had to do with printing our rate books and our July tax bills, which usually gets paid out of the previous year's budget because we usually have the bills in June. We have the rate books files in June, and we pay them out of that, but they all came out of this year's budget because the delay in getting everything out. And so that's why we had the money from last year. Wanted to roll it over to this year because the expenses ended up hitting this year.
Thank you. Questions?
All right, if anybody wants more detail on that narrative, that can be found, Lisa wrote a nice detailed memo on page 21 of 88 in your agenda package. But moving on, next is me. 7,200 asking for two different line items. One to beef up our part-time salaries. We were over about $3,000 last year, so we do not want to be in that situation again. And then about 3,500 in IT hardware for any potential monitor or laptop upgrades. We're trying to stay abreast of current technology, and in the interest of keeping our backs intact and minimizing workman's comp, we want lighter laptops to carry around.
Questions for Tom on those? All right, shall we move to IT?
IT, Joyce is on the line,
Yes.
and she's got 4 line items as well. Go ahead,
Yeah.
Joyce.
Good evening, everyone. So I'm on the page 23 out of 88. All right. So there's 4 items that I wish to roll over from last year to this year. The first 3 items actually was originally requested in my operating budget last year, but due to budget cut, so those items was cut, not being funded. The 4th item is for the new compliance requirement for Microsoft Windows license. And Microsoft is changing their pricing model. So we have the consultant coming over, reevaluate all our licensing, then we are under license with Microsoft. And once we know and they know, so we need to, up to, touching that the missing license that we're not being paying it. So that is a 10,000, we are trying to roll over here. The first line item, that's circling back the first one, the wage and salary, IT always have around $20,000 putting the part-time, and it's helping us to working on several of the different projects, and sometimes the part-time person can help out our help desk for desktop supporting. Sometimes it's start helping us for the workload search. So that is kind of very important for us for our daily operation. And then the second and third one is for the telephone. So it's a phone licensing. So again, Cisco, we are using Cisco phone. Cisco is also get away current their old pricing model, and now they are switching to a subscription model. So this is the increase, well, not increase, but this will be the annual subscription cost we are going to have from now on. Actually, the existing one, it will expire July 2025, but we don't want to wait until expiration. We want to prepare ahead of time, like probably in February, March, we want to switch over to the new server. And also, CT's phone system haven't been upgraded for 5 years. We want to choose the opportunity to upgrade our system while we switch to a new system. I'm here to answer any question you have.
Questions for Joyce? Okay, seeing none, I think, Tom, we can move over to Mickey in the police department if I'm
Yeah,
tracking it home properly.
yes, don't be alarmed by the number of line items. It's really just two different explanations. We're on page 24 of 88 now. And just when you look at the reason over on the far right-hand column, just note that that is one full paragraph. It's not lined up line by line for each of the items. But I will let Mickey and or the chief take it from here.
Thank you, everyone, for hearing me, and thank to the mayor for that sort of opening statement, which puts the rollovers in a positive light and how helpful they are to the department. I'll just make a couple of general statements on the bigger line items. The salary sheet, the surpluses are basically twofold. One is for some odds and ends vacancies intermittent throughout the year. The other one is just some spending overtime efficiencies and cutback by the chief and deputy chiefs. And I just want to hit two items on the two column. First of all, the retirement payout account. That's something that I've had a few questions on. It's a little bit new and I kind of wanted to explain it. The year before last, Henry Dakowitz started this initiative with the support of the mayor to have an account to fund payouts when people leave. Because in the past, what would happen is inevitably in the larger departments, there's rollovers. There's turnover. And when there's a turnover, there's always a payout. There's never any money set aside for that budget. So what ends up happening is the salary accounts either go into deficit or you have to wait to fill the positions. So last year, through rollovers, we were able to fund the payouts. This year, there was $136,000 set aside for payouts. We've had a couple more people leave than the 136. So this $40,000 makes up the difference between what we projected and the amount of people that are actually leaving. So that's that item. The second large item is the $465,000 for the school extra security overtime initiative. This allows us to fund the extra security overtime without going in for any additional funds. Again, it's from money that was already accounted for. So we're really kind of happy about the fact that we were able to pay for this without asking for any additional funds. I'll just say one more thing and then I'll take any questions. We had a couple small supply non-salary items that were rolled over. One is just for repairs to our marine unit vessels, which couldn't happen in last year. So we're rolling over the funds that we had set aside to pay that anytime now. And the other one was for just some vest reimbursements. The money came in after the books were closed, so we couldn't use it, but we'll use it this year to purchase new supplies. That's it. I will take any questions or any further explanations. I'm here.
Questions for Mickey? Thank you, Mickey.
Thank you.
I will just, I'll add, Ed, that you recall last year the big hit to contingency was for the police overtime, 450. So it's good that we don't have to do that again in the year of the labor negotiations.
Yep.
So next up is our final department, and that is the fire department. We have Chief Gatto on the line to talk about. He's got a handful of rollover requests. So, Chief.
Thank you very much. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Chairman, committee members. I don't have a lot. I only have 6 items. So we'll start with the highest one, which is we're requesting. I was requesting $350,000 to cover vacancies and additional overtime. I understand it was cut to 200, which is fine. We'll take it. The second item is the retirement payout. As Mickey kind of alluded to, it's a projection for 3 firefighters retirement at $45,000 each. That's $130,000. The next one is a medical or OSHA required medical physicals that we have to do every year. It was supposed to be invoiced in June. It did not come until July, and it was paid for in July. We paid for it. The other repairs and maintenance, the same kind of thing. It was a fiscal year 24 order that did not come in July, and we paid that when it did come later on. I'm sorry, in June, but it came later on. The motor vehicle parts, which is an account for the mechanics, I'm asking for $10,000 because every year we have the same problem with motor vehicle parts. They just keep going up. So we're anticipating cost increases. And the last one for $5,000 is a transition from it's called Telestaff. It's a scheduling software which has been located on a server in the firehouse, is now being pretty much transitioned to the cloud. So this $5,000 is a one-time cost fee to put everything into the cloud. So that's my rollovers.
Thank you, Chief. Any questions for the chief? Any questions or comments overall regarding the rollovers before we vote on approval?
Sorry, Ed, I've got one more to add. That's not a departmental one. If you go to page 29 in your packet, that's the one titled Employee Benefits / Contingency. So the total rollover request was initially $585,000. One line item is for Social Security. We had budgeted $3 million last year, $3 million again this year. It came in at about $3.2 million for 2024. So what we're doing is asking to roll over what was left, $135,000, to try to get a little bit closer to the actuals from last year. And then in the contingency, we were asking to roll over $450,000 again as a buffer for the labor negotiations. But from what the numbers or how things are going right now, we think we have an adequate reserve in the contingency fund, so we do not need that $450,000.
Okay. Questions for Tom on those two?
And that will do it for all of them.
Okay, any final questions or comments before we vote to approve the rollovers as presented to us this evening? Seeing none, all in favor of the rollovers presented signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? The rollovers are approved. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You.
I believe we have two other
Thank you.
items in other business tonight. Tom, I know Lisa's not here, but the tax assessor's report is in our package.
Al Palumbo is here if anybody has any questions, or if Al, you want to do a quick overview, or did we lose him?
It looks like we may have lost him.
Okay, well, yeah, you're right. The narrative is in there, so if anybody has any follow-up questions, let me know and I can get them to Lisa and or Al. And then, yeah, finally would be Alan on the Oak Hill side.
Good evening, members, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Can you all hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
I'm pleased to announce that Oak Hills Park Authority will not be requesting any rollovers from their budget into this upcoming year. So anyway, last but by no means least, very interesting to hear what's been going on. Oak Hills Park Authority, we're now 2 months into our fiscal year. So we'll just talk a little bit about August on the operational side, the finance side, and then year to date. On the revenue side, compared to our budget, we were $21,000 over our revenue budget in the month of August. Our expenses were down by $8,000 compared to budget. We like that. Revenue up, expenses down. Bottom line, our income net income was $29,000. So moving now to our year-to-date number. Our revenue is over, after 2 months, $68,000 over budget in revenue. Our expenses are $6,000 under. We gave a bit back 2 months ago. So our income, net income now looks to be at $75,000 over budget in the first 2 months. So we continue to do well. The weather has helped us, obviously. as we have, and obviously July and August are two of these busiest months for us here at Oak Hills. Are there any questions on the financial side, Oak Hills?
No.
There being on, just a quick heads up, we are putting together a long-range planning committee at Oak Hills. I think it's time to take a good, long, hard look at what we need to do in the upcoming future. We find ourselves, our revenue is getting topped out. Our T-sheet is about 97%. So, we look to how can we increase our revenue? Well, it's easy to increase prices, but that just isn't the answer. So we need to look at some different areas of how we can increase our revenue. So working with, Gary Leeds, who's an ex, VP Finance for a major corporation, who's on the board here, and other board members, we're going to look at see what's out there. On the capital side, we're doing our bunkers right now, which is great, but we will have some major expenses coming up in the next 2 or 3 years with irrigation. I think water is going to be the next new oil. So it's going to be an interesting area. So when we look at increasing our revenue, we'll be looking hopefully to partner with the city of Norwalk, with Robert Stowers, Norwalk's Parks and Rec, who's on our board, to see if there's any synergies there between Parks and Rec and this great 144-acre facility we have. We need to look at, should we put in some golf simulators, during the winter months? Do we look to possibly construct a learning center as well to help golfers, maybe young golfers, maybe some incorporating working with a not-for-profit group like First Tees to bring some local, younger people or whatever into our world here, and the possibility maybe of a place where golfers could hit some balls, and increase and look at that area. So lots of things in the pipeline. So just a couple of things of what we're looking to work on here at the authority. Any further questions? Thank you.
Thank you, Alan. Thanks for hanging in there tonight.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any additional comments before we close for the evening?
Mr. Chairman, I just want to mention that news that I read this week about Manresa Island. Congratulate the mayor and this team and the city. Listen, I think it's the greatest thing I've read in years here, and that was such a nice surprise. And just look forward to all the good things that are going to happen with that project.
It's quite a project. We were very pleased in dealing with Mr. McCord. He and his wife took a kayak trip around Manresa, and she looked at it and said, we should do something with that. And the rest is history.
Great job.
Great. All right. Any additional comments? Seeing none, can I get a motion to adjourn?
I'll move it.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, we are adjourned. Have a nice evening.
Thank you, everyone.